everybody. Good to see such a nice big room full of people. Traditionally, our services had three elements: a theme, a commemorative activity, and a memento. The theme is chosen each year to stimulate reflection and around which the activity, memento, and choice of music is based. The theme for this year is inspirational words. And over many years in this role, I've both heard and read many inspirational words from families of donors and also transplant recipients. Inspiring words of courage and compassion in the face of tragedy and loss. Moving expressions of gratitude and appreciation from recipients, often accompanied by a comment that mere words fail to convey the depth of their feelings. We've carried this theme through to our memento for you to take away in memory of the day. Oh, okay. A small white river stone, smoothed and polished over the passage of time by the motion of rushing water. The stones have been engraved with words chosen to best symbolise our time spent together today. Love, inspire and remember. We're going to be hearing three personal stories today. And I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Gerry Ryan. Gerry is here today to share what organ and tissue donation has meant to her and her family at a time of great sadness. Gerry's husband Tim died suddenly in 2011 and went on to help two very grateful people through kidney transplantation. Please join me in welcoming Gerry to share her story.
Hi. I just wanted to share with you who the man behind the kidneys was. So, my husband, Timothy John Ryan, was born on the 26th of March 1953. He was the youngest of three children. He was born a blue baby. He was diagnosed with a ventricular septal defect, a hole in the heart. And he spent much of his infant years in and out of the Royal Liverpool Children's Hospital in Myrtle Street with either pneumonia or bronchitis. At the age of 14 in 1967, he had open heart surgery to repair the hole. The surgeons at the time decided they would leave the hole well alone, and they widened a valve instead. This left him with a rather attractive zip that ran from the top of his chest right down to his belly button. But I cannot begin to imagine what a terrifying time that must have been for him and for his parents. After finishing university in 1975, he went to work for an edible oils manufacturer in Liverpool. He was in the quality control lab. So his job each day at 8:30 in the morning was to taste the previous day's batches of cooking oils and margarines. Not the best job in the world. After 12 months of margarine tasting washed down with a cheeky little cooking oil, he decided you probably could have too much of a good thing, and he went to work as the quality control supervisor at United Biscuits. Biscuits were a much more palatable experience after sampling cooking oils. But he soon decided that life as an industrial chemist really wasn't for him, and so he answered an advert for trainee computer programmers with a then manufacturer, Sperry Univac. That job brought him lots of job satisfaction, real success, and the opportunity to travel, which is something he'd always wanted to do. Tim and I met in 1976 the way most Poms do. We met in a pub. We married in 1980, and by that time Tim's job had moved down to Birmingham, and that's where we moved to settle down and start our married life. In 1985, just 4 weeks before our first son was born, the job took us further south again, and we moved down to South Oxfordshire. In 1991, our youngest, Jed, he came along, and life was complete. And Pete has added in, and the pair have terrorised us ever since. That is true. In 1994, at the age of 41, after not going to the doctors, as blokes tend not to, a real niggle in his foot, then moved to his feet, to both feet, to his wrists and to his hands, and he was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And this spread quite rapidly. He was obviously at the back of the queue when they were dishing out the health cards up there. All his family seemed to run on Duracell batteries. They all lived well into their 90s. His dad passed away in December 2012, the ripe old age of 94. His mum is 94 and still living in the same house in Liverpool. Tim was obviously fitted with the bargain basement reject shop batteries. He was a gentle man in the true sense of the word. He was calm to my fiery, and he had a really keen sense of humour. I remember after a late night working, he was over in Philadelphia working with a colleague from the UK, and after a late night in the office there, they went for a few beers. And by the time they came out of having a few beers, the eating houses were closed, all the restaurants were closed, but there was a McDonald's drive-through. So Tim and Simon stood in the drive-through queue at McDonald's to try and get some food. They refused because they were not in the car. So, yeah. Saturday afternoons, particularly towards the end of the football season, that is the round ball game, was always interesting in our household because the boys and I both support Liverpool, and Tim was a lifelong Everton supporter. So yeah, and you had to have a sense of humour in those days to support Everton. In 2005, he had the opportunity to come to Australia to work, a move that he wanted to make in the early 80s, not long after we got married, but one that I wasn't keen on at the time. So when he got the opportunity in 2005, I couldn't stop him again, and I'm really glad I didn't, because he loved this country. He absolutely loved it. He was so happy here. He was able to reduce the number of tablets that he was on to control his rheumatoid, so it was beneficial to his health. It was a good move. Unfortunately, while the arthritis seemed to be sort of under control, his lungs then became a huge problem. And he was diagnosed in, I think, about 2008-9 with bronchiectasis, which is pretty similar to mesothelioma. In April 2011, his chest specialist in Wollongong then referred him to St Vincent's and said, really, your only hope is for a lung transplant. He was hospitalised for the whole of June 2011, and they ran a number of tests, and we were really hoping he was going to get this lung transplant. He was taken back into hospital again in August 2011, and unfortunately he had a massive deterioration. And when we thought we were going to would be recipients of a lung transplant, we were broken the news that unfortunately in Tim's case it was not going to be a viable option. So we also were told at that time that there was something Tim could donate. I think I shocked the medical staff because my reaction was to laugh. Probably not what they're used to seeing. I laughed because Tim and I had spoken about organ donation over many years, and we used to joke, who'd want a heart with a hole in it? Nobody's going to want his lungs because they're shot. And his eyesight was so bad that if anybody had eyesight that bad, they could gladly have his glasses. So that was why I laughed. It was probably not appropriate. Anyway, we hadn't considered kidneys, but that's what we were told Tim could donate. So while my head was reeling, trying to come to terms with the fact that he was going to be a donor rather than a recipient, the decision was taken firmly out of my hands by two fabulous young men that are an absolute tribute to their father, and it was the boys that said, absolutely, without even a second's hesitation, they said, well, we were expecting Dad could have received, and he can't, and so if you're expecting to receive, you should be willing to donate. And so we did. And so as a result, 2 people received a kidney each. They are off dialysis, and their quality of life is much improved as a result of the decision taken by those 2 young men. As news spread of Tim's passing, I received emails from former colleagues of his from far afield as USA, Europe, Singapore and China, all expressing their sadness. We took half of his ashes back to Liverpool and held a memorial service there for him. which was attended by colleagues that he hadn't worked with in over 30 years. They took the time and the effort to drive up to Liverpool on a cold, snowing December day to attend this service. And that is a measure of the regard in which Tim was held by pretty much everybody he met. So that's the story of the man behind the kidneys. Thank you for listening.